Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again tonight. We're actually going to do a somewhat familiar topic, especially if you exist in the art world online, and it also very much deals with the last subject that we spoke about in our last video. During our video where we discussed our tips for overcoming art block while you are in quarantine, Kara mentioned social media a lot. The fact that it's a good idea to do things like join artist groups and try to get critiques and get ideas on what other work you can start, and that is, I agree, a very good idea for overcoming that issue. But then you think of social media on the opposite side of the coin. I don't know why there's such an influx lately. I think somewhat people just are mad at everything, but all over YouTube, all over Twitter, Instagram, everything. What I've been seeing a lot of is people saying that they're so done with the art community on DeviantArt, or they're so done with the art community on Facebook, or they're so done with the art community on Tumblr. They're done with the art community on pretty much everything. So what I wanted to discuss is why that might be. Why is it that there's seemingly no social media platform that makes artists happy? There's always some kind of problem with it. There's always some issue with how it's run or with the members in that group. So I'm gonna turn the start of that conversation over to Kara for a second. Why do you think that might be? Why do you think so many artists are suddenly saying that they're so dissatisfied with pretty much every social media platform? Do you think that there's anything about certain ones that is more bothersome than others, or is it just social media as a whole?
I guess it depends on what has happened to the individual, because it's hard to say what happens in all the groups, because I'm thinking a lot of it happens through groups.
Yeah.
That people are in.
Yeah, because they do say the art community on blah.
Cause I just started getting into them, so I haven't seen anything too bad lately. And I just started, so I think it just depends on the group. Cause the one manga group I'm in, seems like everybody has been pretty chill and really supportive of everybody, even if they're just starting out. So the proportions are kind of wonky still, because everybody is when you first start. And everybody seems pretty awesome about it. I think it just depends on which ones that you prefer. But I think it may be because when an artist feels like something happened to them, they tell the art community about what happened to them, and then they have a following that will just kind of go with them.
So you think it's less the social media platforms themselves and more the fact that these people are joining artist groups on social media and they're more dissatisfied with the people in the group or the admin of the group?
Yes.
Like there's a personal grievance there.
Yes.
And if that's the case, what kind of things do you think are potentially happening in these groups with either the admins or the other group members that are making people so frustrated and upset that they're trying to turn people completely away from that platform to showcase their art on? And is there a potential way that can be stopped? Like, is there something the group admin or the group members could do to stop so many, because it's a lot of people saying it, to stop so many people from feeling that way?
Yeah, like I said, when you have a big following, a lot of people follow really well-known artists and stuff, so they kind of have somebody to look up to for the most part. And when something happens to them, it's not a bad thing, but then they relay what happened to them, and then other artists feel like they had happened to them as well. Then it's just like a spiraling thing.
Yeah, it sounds like cancel culture and mob mentality.
Yeah, and it depends on what exactly happened. I'm not really familiar with it, because I'm just now branching out to advertising my artwork because I've always been very scary about it until I was comfortable with drawing and just the whole art theft pretty much. And I think a lot of it is potential art theft and people saying that I drew this when they didn't. And I know a lot of things have happened where I think there's a lot of it, people think that their design is stolen or their art style is stolen. And I think a lot of it is people think kind of like the same ideas for the most part because we're all human. And
yeah, there is no original idea anymore.
And as long as it's basically like as long as you can tell it's by somebody, like as you know that it's your art and you have proof that it's your art, then you don't have to get so uppity about it. Because you'll just be like, hey, you like drawing this kind of style or theme as I do. And I think a lot of it is, like, I'm not trying to, like...
So I think what you're trying to say is not just in art, but humanity as a whole. Like, humans, the way we create is adapt and appropriate, basically. Mm-hmm. We adapt and we appropriate, so we see something, we think it's interesting and we want it for ourselves because we're natural collectors, and we just copy that thing, but then put maybe this and that tweak on it to make it a little bit more our own style. And I do agree with that. Actually, the reason I wanted to open up this dialogue with you tonight is because of the fact that people are so vague about this. There's countless videos on the subject, countless posts on, I hate blah community, like blah art community on this particular social media platform, but they don't say why. They just say, oh, it's really toxic there. Well, what does toxic mean? It's a vague word. It could mean one thing for you and one thing for me.
I think, let's say there's a couple different groups I'm in. So let's just say someone says, hey, can I get critique on this? But then someone is a little too mean about it. Like they take their critique a little too far. Or they don't give a good explanation, because a lot of times when people are critiquing, they'll just say proportions are not right, but you don't follow up with that.
And it's like, okay, what is it? Is her head bigger than her body? Are her forearms too long? Like, are her feet weird size or something? Like, you need to be more specific. And generally, like, if I put something, for example, on Reddit and I ask for a critique, if someone gives me kind of a vague critique, I do follow up with, okay, I see you said that, you know, this is wrong with it. Well, can you elaborate on that? And just saying, can you elaborate on that, usually opens up the floor to them telling you more. Sometimes I've noticed, because these people have told me this, people give a vague critique at the start because they don't know how you're going to react, because some artists are very protective of their work to the point that even if they say they want to critique, they don't. They really don't. They want you to tell them it's wonderful and perfect and that nothing is wrong with it. And I think everyone's at least a little guilty of that, because it's your baby. You don't want people saying anything's wrong with it. But it's important, just like with people babies, it's important to know when something's wrong so that you can do better. And so basically, what you're saying is you think the reason people think that social media art communities are so toxic are in part because of the fact that people think that given the size of certain groups, their designs or their art style is getting stolen, and that kind of pushes them away, or that people are having difficulty either accepting critiques, or the people giving the critiques are being way too judgmental or harsh, or not really giving a critique, they're just being rude.
I think there's some things like that. I think there's also instances where the admins are not overseeing something very well, or I have noticed that if you don't get a certain amount of likes, or if no one likes your post, you don't get noticed. So I think a lot of it is the algorithm of how things are added. And then people are used to, like, if I comment on your photo,
Mm-hmm.
you see that person quite more often than others.
Yeah. Especially if the admin happens to see it. There's a lot of power in the admins of these groups.
Like, if I really think it's similar, I have to change something that maybe for my own benefit needs to, like, be a little bit different if people are assuming it's like this.
Yeah, and I mean, at the same time, like, I think what a lot of us need to keep in mind, because people do take that really personally and it kind of hits hard, is that when people say that, and they're saying it while also saying they enjoy your art or your book or whatever you're creating, they do mean it as a compliment. They're just like, they're trying to say, oh, I really enjoy this genre, not this is a clone. And I think that a lot of us hear it as this is a clone instead of I like this genre.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, here's an example, actually. So something that I've been watching recently on Disney Plus is The Owl House, and there's a lot of satire aimed towards J.K. Rowling in it, but is a completely unique story, you know, as unique as you can be these days. It has literally nothing to do with Harry Potter, but a lot of people who like Harry Potter like The Owl House because it's about witches, younger witches, kid witches who are like teenagers in school learning to do crazy spells and stuff. So there's that coming of age element along with, you know, there's some kind of bad sorcerer and a good sorcerer and stuff. And just because you have certain themes that overlap, people who like one are probably going to be likely to enjoy the other. Same with like a lot of people who like King Arthur type of stories really like things like Lord of the Rings and, you know, Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. You know, it doesn't mean that they're exactly the same and there's nothing at all dissimilar about them. It just means that you enjoy a certain genre.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people kind of get scared for the most part, because if there's an artist that's bigger than them and they have been doing this a lot longer than yours, people are gonna automatically think that you copied off of them. And I think that is what is in people's minds, is that when they create something and then there's like an artist that basically is
doing something similar.
Yeah, doing something similar, and they are very, like, let's say I'm gonna use Lore Olympus real quick. It's a webtoons comic and when I heard about that, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, it's nowhere near the same style as what I need to do, but it has like Hades and Persephone and things like that. So I thought it was kind of neat. Like, I haven't really like read it. I know it's really popular, and now has like a line of like merge at Hot Topic. It's getting pretty big for like a web comic and that kind of thing. And I know that I have those same characters in my story for a while, but they are very, very different.
Yeah, it's all up to your interpretation of how this ancient deity is.
Yeah.
No, do not.
But I feel like a lot of it is being afraid that your art is going to look like somebody's, and then when you do see it happen, it's kind of a shocker.
Yeah. Well, and I think that people get a little bit too black and white about, you know, quote, art style theft or design theft, because people generally either say, well, there's no such thing because everyone adapts and stuff, and like there's no such thing as a wholly creative idea anymore. Someone somewhere in the world is going to have a style similar to yours. Or they say, no, you absolutely are an art thief. My art looks just like yours and I drew it first. Therefore, you are, you know, plagiarizing and you need to leave, you know, wherever you are. I don't think it's that black and white. I think it's a huge gray area. I think that we need to think of it more as, in art, historically and speaking in modern times, creativity being based on inspiration is extremely important. Everyone who creates is inspired by something and someone. I've loved Van Gogh forever. I don't paint in his style, but his colors inspire me. The nature scenes he did inspire me, and the way he does his eyes. So sometimes there might be elements of how he inspired me in my art. That doesn't mean I'm completely ripping him off, so I'm not gonna just completely repaint one of his pieces. It's already been made. It doesn't need to be remade. But if I hadn't heard of his artwork, and if I hadn't studied him and learned his techniques, seen the color choices he used, my part of Fire Sphere wouldn't exist, because I wouldn't have drawn on anybody else for inspiration. I think that that gray area is, instead of thinking of it as either theft exists or it doesn't, let's think of it as inspiration is important for art, because without inspiration, there's nothing to create. Because, well, let's think of it this way too. So, you've been working on Fire Sphere since middle school, but you've also mentioned in previous videos that your style for it changed a lot, like dramatically since then, not just because you have more artistic knowledge now and more practice, but just the actual style itself has completely done a 180. Something must have inspired you, whether it was a story, whether it was a movie, whether it was a book, something inspired you to create that art, and as a result, you've created a graphic novel series that people travel long distances just to buy when they know you're going to be at a convention. If you had not been inspired by those anime you were watching, by those TV shows you were watching, by those books you were reading, Fire Sphere would not exist. If we weren't inspired by other artists and they didn't make us want to practice, maybe even in their style, who knows, while we're starting to learn what our own style is, nothing would have ever been made. There would have been like one artist at one point in history, and that would have been it.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a very good point, because you will see in later videos of the inspirations for my art style, because I want to do some like video reactions or something like that with a couple
Your old sketchbooks.
Yeah. And I want to show everybody like where it all started, how far you can come, how far you can like go, and just never give up on like what you want to do, because I've been doing this since I was in middle school and I'm now 32, and it's just been really cool trying to find like my own style, because I grew up watching old animation and it's been fun. And it's kind of a mix between 80s, like everybody has like big hair, fluffy hair, and then it also has a little bit of manga influence.
Yeah.
And anime influence.
Well, and I'm looking around the room right now. You've got 3 different anime posters hanging up on the wall right now. A lot of people who don't actively watch anime have accused anime of basically all looking the same, which is obviously not true, but like I can see how if you don't watch a lot of it, it is very similar to each other. But you can also say that for Disney movies and anyone who has left that company to pursue their own. You can say that about anything from like the 90s WB era and stuff, like Batman and X-Men and Gargoyles and stuff. And again, without that artistic inspiration drawn from somebody else and without practicing those styles, these companies would not have gotten as far as they have, because how are you supposed to animate something as clean as one of those shows and continuously animate different shows and different movies at the same time all by yourself? It just can't be done at the pace that they did. So people, copying anime style or copying Disney style is the reason those styles are so popular today and people love and collect them and are excited whenever they see them.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just been very fun just having grown up with like so many anime shows. Like my favorites were Tenchi, Kenshin, Cowboy Bebop, like all the 90s anime that was on Toonami, and all of them inspired me in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point I would like to do like one of those YouTube videos where we kind of do like one of those video commentaries of like, hey, you should check out this show if you have never watched it, and like why what this show means to me and stuff. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's okay if it's like something that isn't popular or it isn't popular anymore, because I always have thought that the term guilty pleasure is sad. Like, if you love something, just love it. And if people think it's silly, that's their business, not your business. You don't need to be worried about what somebody else thinks of something that you enjoy. It's special to you for a reason. Mm-hmm. That's why, like, this has even come up in our own household in like the cancel culture sphere, where I'm like, well, even if somebody did something not so great, if, you know, their songs or their movies or whatever, or their books helped you through like the worst part of your life and potentially even saved your life, love that media, because it's yours now.
But yeah, I mean, it's just very, very, like, you don't know what's going on with every artist, because it could be like something that happened to them within a group, and I think it's just sad that that happens, because you don't want to not create anymore.
Yeah.
And the good thing about being on those groups is that just leave it. Go to another one. Go to ones that you feel more respected and that you think is beneficial to you.
Yeah, and at the same time, regardless of what group you go to, there's always going to be people who are having a bad day or who don't articulate themselves well, who are going to hurt your feelings, who are going to be maybe a little too harsh or too critical for you that day. And you need to remember, like, if it's not real criticism, if they're just trying to get a rise out of you, if you want to be an artist, you're going to have to deal with that forever. So I wish I had better advice, but you're going to have armor-plated skin pretty quickly, because no matter what you post online or you put out into the universe for sale, if people know that you could potentially make money off that item, they're going to find a reason to hate it.
Yeah. I feel like you're always going to have that somewhere. I have to, like, not, like, back down from them, because it is hard. It's very hard to hear, like, negative things about your work that you love. It's your baby. And when you have to try to be really, really nice and be respectful. Like, no matter what. It's like working in retail, which I'm sure a lot of people have had experience with. You have to show good customer service. And how you do that is that even though that the customer is wrong, you always, like, try to help that person to see things. It's like working in retail where you think that when a customer comes up to you and says, hey, this item is not what it's supposed to be, and then just starts criticizing you and then, like, beats you down, and you have to try so hard to hold back your emotions during that time, because you have to be like, okay, let me like make sure that things are okay, and I'll get the manager if you need to, that kind of thing, but there's no manager for your artwork. But it's the same thing of like, if someone is being disrespectful to you, don't show them disrespect back to them, because it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, and that's actually something that, again, is a very divisive topic I've noticed amongst artists, whether it be online or in person. A lot of people say, well, it's your art and you are your own boss when you're an artist, so you're allowed to bite back. To an extent, I agree. Like, if someone's just badgering you incessantly or bullying you or harassing you and stuff, and just, they're clearly just being a troll or being nasty for absolutely no reason other than to upset you, bite back a little bit. But there is a point at which you need to think about, am I biting back in a professional way? Because you are a professional. You have to think of everyone, even the trolls, as potential clients, because I have turned people in the past before. It is possible. And even if you don't want that person as your customer, your other customers are witnessing how you're interacting with this troll. So yeah, defend yourself, defend your work, say that you're proud of it, say you don't care about that person's opinion, but make sure that you double and triple check what you're about to send them if it's online, and really have a good think if you're in person before you just say something. Make sure you think before you speak, because the way you say something could damage your reputation. If it just looks like you are going after that person's character or something that's completely unrelated to the argument at hand, your customers are going to see you as the bully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's a very good thing to remember. Like, take that little tip with you if you've been in retail or the fast food industry, is that be respectful no matter what, and because you know in your heart that you're saying the right things.
Mm-hmm.
And people will see that in your comments. All right, I think that's everything.
Yeah, hopefully you guys found this video educational and entertaining. We definitely endeavor to be both of those things, and I hope that you enjoyed what Kara was sketching and scribbling for you throughout it. And as always, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate having you here on our channel. Make sure that you like and subscribe and share this video with your friends and family you think will be interested in it, and we will see you in a couple days for the next one.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.